Hi, I'm Rick Conlo. I'm glad you're here. We're going to talk about 5 superstar coaching steps. And why do we use the word superstar? Because you do this as a leader, it'll make a huge difference with your team and your opportunities in your organization. Coaching is one of those areas that everybody talks about, but few do really well. And so we need to know how to do it. We need to know how to do it effectively. We need to know how to do it consistently. I show you some pictures here of Olympic athletes. And I'm here to tell you that to be an Olympic athlete, well, you know this, you're an elite in what you do, whatever sport or endeavor you're engaged in. You don't get to be at that level without being effective unless you're some smaller country that doesn't have much of a big team or much resources. But for most it is. And here's one thing they all have in common. They have a coach, and the coach trains them, pushes them, encourages them, helps them to get to the next level, to the next level, to the next level. It takes 10,000 hours of practice, 4 years of work to be an elite in that category. And I got to thinking one day, if that's important in sports, why is it important in business? I've seen so many managers and organizations that don't know how to coach or don't even do it well. And I've seen, when given an opportunity, many don't take the advantage to be a better coach. I remember this cartoon where the manager walks up to the employee and says, "Why aren't you working?" And the employee says, "I didn't see you coming." Unfortunately, it seems to be like that in organizations. And the managers aren't around that much, so we don't have as much going on as we really would like to have happen. Quite frankly, coaching will help us develop self-directed employees. So they want to do a good job. Why? For their reasons. That's what a good coach begins to do. I've found there are really 5 types of coaching out there in the marketplace today in the guts of the organization. And you'll see the upper left there, we got T-Rex, where they bite your head off. That's not coaching. That's an extinct leadership style, and they ought to be shot for what they do, or at least fired. And then in the upper right, what you see is a drill sergeant. We have all of that tough leader kind of an approach. Here, in the military, it's for the safety reasons, and you got to be tough and yell and scream and all that stuff. They're even finding in the military that they have to soften that approach to be more effective and still get the job done. But anyway, that's one that we've seen. And then on the bottom left, you see the person with the bewildered look. In other words, the managers don't have a clue what's going on. They're overwhelmed by what's happening. And then we have the question mark, and that's the leaders that don't know what to do. They don't know what to do, and so they're not getting it done. They don't know how to coach. And in the middle, you see probably the greatest basketball coach of all time, John Wooden. His teams won 10 NCAA championships in 12 seasons. That would be like whatever city you're from winning the Super Bowl 10 times out of 12 or the World Cup that many times. Wow, he was great. And they did a little study of him. I read a book about him. And they found that he was positive 99% of the time. Instead of yelling at somebody saying, "You screwed up here, do it this way," he'd say, "Okay, what I want you to do is pass the ball like this." And he'd show him the right way. Or one of his coaches would. That's really the model of coaching we need to have. That's how we bring out the best in people. So why coaching today? Well, I found a lot of managers are frustrated. They have a lot of anxiety, ambiguity in the organization. They're disappointed with their results or what's going on in the organization. They're fearing for their jobs. And so they're not getting done what they want done, or they didn't get that promotion and they got a heartbreak for what's happening. Boy, you know what? Our employees feel that when that's going on, and it's a tough place to be. And coaching can help us alleviate many of those negative emotions and get us focused on career advancement, achievement, passion for what we're doing, getting some recognition and praise, having our own pride and self-satisfaction. That's the focus we need to have. And if we do that, it's amazing how we can have a positive impact and turn a disengaged employee into an engaged one. That's what we're talking about, which brings higher productivity and quality and service and sales and all those positive outcomes we want to have. One study we came across, the Personal Management Association, found that if you have training plus coaching, you can impact results 88%. When I first learned that study, I wanted to prove if it was true. And I had just gotten a big a client, and they wanted to improve sales to existing customers. And coaching was one of the key tools we were going to use to drive results. And they also wanted to improve customer service. So as we were sitting around doing the planning, getting ready to roll things out, the leader said, well, maybe we can improve 10, 15%. That was the goal. They based some incentives on it. Well, I'm here to tell you, we got a 75% improvement. Now, you know what? It's not 88%. That was 75% in sales. And then we had a positive impact on customer retention, reducing the overall company by defections by 2%, which had millions of dollars of impact. Did we reach our goal? We exceeded it, absolutely. So when I talk about big numbers like that, it is possible to have those kind of results. Now, what are the biggest obstacles that managers have related to coaching? Some don't care. I mean, there are bad bosses out there. I've written articles about that. One article I wrote about how to deal with a bad boss. We had over 70,000 people review it, and hundreds and give comments about the situation that they're in. And then we have some managers that don't want to take the time. They don't want to make the effort. That's really saying they don't care as well. And then we have some, as we saw by one of the earlier pictures, they're yelling and telling and they think that's coaching, but they're mistaken. And then some just don't know how to coach. I put up on the screen here an equation for you. Write down the first thing you notice about this slide. Now, if you're by yourself, you can just think what it is. And if you're in a group, just write it down. Don't say it out loud. What's the first thing you notice? Okay? Ready? All right, what'd you get? Here's what most people say. That middle equation is wrong. Rick, what's the matter with you? Don't you know how to subtract? Why wouldn't we say that 2 out of the 3 are right and focus on the constructive, the positive, the strength? Too often what happens in coaching efforts is we focus on the weakness, the problem, and that's not coaching most effectively. We need to do better. So when do you coach? I say this, any employee, any time. Could be on a scheduled formal coaching basis or an unscheduled basis, informal coaching, and I'll define each of those. In other words, all employees, from the trainee, the learner, the new person, to the person with performance problems, to your very best employee needs coaching. Why? Because it can help all of them do a better job. And if we do that with all of them, we get an aggregate impact on our outcomes that can be just incredible, as I talked to you about before. If we take the time, if we know how to do it. And that's what this message is all about. So coaching is an ongoing process. Get that now. That's the operative word. Ongoing. It's not something we do just on a performance problem. It's not just something we do after we go to a seminar. It's not just something we do because our boss said maybe we should coach. It's not something we do because we heard someone else talk about it or we saw something on the TV. Quite frankly, we need to make it ongoing, a part of what we do without thinking. It needs to be part of what we do to improve the skills and the knowledge of our team, to fine-tune existing skills, to help them make personal change to be more effective, to increase their competencies and their competence, to improve, of course, overall results. And one point that's not here is to help them become self-directed, self-inspired to do it when we're not even around. That's the true test of an excellent coach, is what happens when you're not there. So there are 2 major kinds of coaching we'll look at, and then I'll focus on formal coaching in terms of 5-step process. First is informal coaching. Second is formal coaching. Informal coaching is anything we do day to day. A few seconds here, a minute or 2 there, that can have an impact on our employees. It really lays the foundation for what we do in formal coaching. So it's those brief interactions on the phone, through a text, an email. It could be in an individual or with a group, trying to make a positive impact on what we do. Personal, or it could be related to something on the job goals that we have. But it's about encouragement and recognition and it's support and listening and excitement and enthusiasm. It's following through at every given moment time that we can help. Now, some people say, well, that's micromanaging, Rick. No, it isn't. It's communicating with people and doing it positively. It's that concept of a person's emotional bank account. The more positive we put in terms of our interactions, even if it's slight little things, when we have to give an employee bad news or some negative feedback, they're willing to listen and understand because we've made an effort to support them and build them up, not beat them up all the time. You see the difference here and why that's important? This is a key point. And if we do that well, we build trust in our relationship so that when we get down to the nitty-gritty and some other things, they'll pay attention. They'll work with you on it. They want to. It's not because they have to. Informal coaching lays the foundation to what we do. And then we have formal coaching. These are the structured times we give our employees. One-on-one time. We document it in an informal way. This is not your company's performance review process. That's done once a year, every 6 months. Quite frankly, that's tied to pay, always, even though you may separate it. It's always tied to pay, and it becomes very frustrating for employees because often the raises are cost of living, which means not much at all and doesn't have an impact. And you got the rating forms, and they're very subjective often, even though we try to quantify them. And so people get all their emotions all caught up in their pay increase. And it often becomes a negative process for employees. This is above and beyond that. This is between you and me as a manager about your goals for this department, for this company, your career opportunities, and your skill and competencies in what you're doing. It's us working together. So we usually schedule it by appointment. If you're separated by distance, you might have to do some of them by phone, and they can be. I've done thousands of phone coaching meetings on the phone, and they can be in person, but they got to be continued over time on a scheduled basis. How often should you do something like that? I'm often asked. Well, it really depends. I say this: the more customer interactions the employee has, the more often you need to meet. So it might be daily to weekly. That may sound a lot, but then you shorten the amount of time you spend with them. And then if you have fewer customer interactions, you could go monthly to quarterly. I prefer monthly. That's what I did as a leader. I've had up to 10 direct reports a couple different times, a couple different offices in my career, and it really made a difference with the people I'm working with. So what are the 5 steps to superstar coaching? Let me go over them briefly, and I'll add a few comments on each of those. First, you got to start with clear expectations and goals. In our experience, we found in our research with our clients, 80% of job performance problems are the result of a lack of clear expectations and goals. Second thing then is you have to assess your employees' performance based on what they're doing. And you do that with reports and observation and discussions. And then you need to create a game plan to help them get better. And part of that game plan is to help them win. So what are the goals and the action steps? And then you give feedback and guidance, strategically placed to be able to do that. We want to teach our employees to learn how to assess their own performance, but we strategically give feedback and guidance. Update our plans, and then we got to follow up. And the focus is on attitude, skills, and results. All of these go together. It isn't necessarily step 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5, although the foundation is clear expectations and goals. So, how do we dig into it? There are 5 key questions to assess performance. So if I'm sitting down with an employer, we're one-on-one, one of the things I'll start with is, what are the goals, the key goals we've been working on, Bill? And then he needs to tell me, and I'll say, how's it going? And I want to see how he responds to that. And I'll say, well, what's working in terms of your action steps to get you there? And we'll have a conversation about that. And then I'll ask him, what isn't working? And then I may ask him, what help do you need from me or others? And then I'll ask, what do you think you can do differently or better? Notice those questions. Now, they won't necessarily be the only questions I ask, but they'll be the ones that drive the conversation. And what am I doing here? I'm asking to see how they assess their performance, and then I strategically give feedback and guidance to help them in those areas. Many times we will agree, especially if we have a coaching process that's been ongoing, as I discussed. Sometimes we won't, and then we talk about the difference in terms of what we need to do. Out of this, we build a new plan or update the plan, and then, of course, set the date for the next time we go around. One question I'm often asked is, how many goals do you have? Well, we need to have them on priorities, what's most important, and it can't be 55 goals with action steps, that old MBO approach. Really, I say 3 to 5 are the optimum area in terms of where we need to be. That keeps it focused and keeps us on track with what's most important to a job. And we need to have some data to help us measure what those are and be able to bring those to the party. And some people say, well, geez, Rick, how long do these meetings take? I say 30 to 45 minutes. And why that time frame? Quite frankly, I could skip some of these questions and just tell them, here's what you're doing right, here's what you're doing wrong, here's what the reports say, here's what I want you to do. No. Why is that? Think about that for a minute. Because I don't get any engagement from them. I don't get any input from them. I don't get an opportunity to recognize them for their progress. I don't get a dialogue going to get them to think through what they could do and what impact they could make or what ideas they have. And sometimes employees aren't that, they don't communicate. They're not very extroverted. So you say, well, what do you think about this? How about this idea? Have you ever tried this? I've used this before. What do you think? And then we get them engaged. It becomes a dialogue, not a monologue. So when the meeting's done, the employee feels a part of what the plan is. They don't feel evaluated. What they feel is that we've discussed things together and they've had an opportunity to win and being a part of that, creating their own destiny. Even though as a leader, through your feedback, you can guide them in certain directions that you need to go. And don't forget, they may come up with things you didn't think about. They may have better ideas for you, and that's awesome. Now we're learning as a leader too. See what I'm talking about here? That's the power of this process. So then, the end of the meeting, we set up the next date and we meet again, let's say on a monthly basis. And then we do it again and again and again. If we need to do it a little more often because things are a little more complicated, we schedule every 2 weeks maybe. You got to use good judgment on how often you do that. But there's power in this. Not any one coaching session will make the difference. Although any one coaching session can make a difference. See what I'm talking about there? I can be really helpful working through a problem, coaching an employee on one thing. But over time is where I have the big impact on the outcomes. And that's what we want. We want sustained progress, don't we? We don't want a one-time result. We want it continued and progress going up. Because quite frankly, in organizations, our goals tend not to get smaller. They tend to get bigger. Wouldn't you agree? Now, good coaches communicate clear on performance objectives, as I talked about. They're specific, they explain it. If they need training, they provide it. That's all part of the action plan. And they give feedback and guidance. Good coaches regularly give performance feedback. When we do our informal coaching, there are times we can say to people and keep it positive, gee, Sue, I saw that report you did on our biggest client, and I just want to tell you it was well done. Why? Because it was very specific. You had done your homework. You outlined the objectives and what the solutions were. Great job. Boy, am I glad you're on my team. So we can give that kind of recognition in short pieces. So that kind of feedback, not just in the coaching session. I say once a month recognition isn't enough. Then we're doing it because we have to. We do it because we want to, and they've earned it. We don't do it because we have so many recognitions to give. So we got to give that verbal feedback. And then, of course, we got to tell them if something isn't right. Geez, I saw that you took some actions on our new procedure, but 2 of them were skipped. I just want to remind you about them. Did you notice that? Anything you can do to help remember what to do with that? So we need to be able to do that, but people will hear it because we've gone out of our way in a genuine way to give positive feedback too. And we got to consider all relevant information. One employee came across, he wasn't performing well. Well, his wife just had twins and they had a busy household going on. And so you consider that a little bit in terms of what they're doing. And we also got to take the big picture. What's going on in the organization? Are there changes that's going on? So we can consider that when we assess performance. Good coaches as well observe and monitor. So yes, we assess performance based on what employees tell us, but we also look at reports, and we also got to be, leadership is a high contact sport. Be engaged. If you've got a call center, listen to your employees on the phone. Walk through the department and be engaged. Take some calls yourself. Know what's going on. See what I'm talking about with that? Be engaged. If you're in sales management, get in the field and work with your people. Talk to customers face to face. Talk to your sales reps face to face. If you're in a tech department, yes, we got to communicate. Hold a meeting. I had one tech manager say, "You mean I can actually hold a meeting?" Yes, you can. You can talk to your people. Don't be afraid to do that. This helps you monitor performance and see where people are at. So important nowadays, especially as I've heard from employees, you never can find a manager when you need one. I hate to say it, but I've heard it time and time again. And know your team well enough to understand them. What's important to them? Do they have a family? What do they do on vacations? Are they involved in some sports? Do they have an avocation that they're really excited about? One employee I knew, was a musician, played the saxophone. Awesome. But I only found that out by asking questions about what they're going to do after work or what do they do in their spare time. Not to pry, but just to know people better, because it gives you clues to what's important to them. And that helps us build lines of communication to cement trust and to be able to understand what motivates your team. I've already talked about recognition. That's verbal recognition where you praise progress, or reward recognition for high performance. Now, some managers say to me, Rick, we can't give awards. We don't have any budget for that. Well, with a little creativity, a little searching on the internet, you can make stuff up to give out homemade plaques and in picture frames and little cards, recognition cards that you can make up to be able to share with them. All that, if done genuinely, will be well received by most people. And people like recognition. Good coaches also build a warm, friendly relationship. They set aside the time. When we schedule the time to meet with our team one-on-one or to have a team meeting as a group, we do it. We have contingency plans in case something comes up. Sometimes our boss calls us to things that we have to get engaged in, so we let people know about that ahead of time. But we take a caring and sensitive approach. Now, some people say, Rick, what about high standards? You got to be tough to get people to do well. Well, all of this is about being tough and about setting high standards because you're closer to your team. And what are you talking about? Who they are, how they're doing on their job, and the performance. And we're not setting small goals. We're setting big goals to help them win, to become champions, superstars in what they do. And I believe employees have the potential to be superstars. They all have a superstar within them. They just don't know it. And most managers don't know that either. A leader's job is to bring out the best in people, kind of like Kyle Maynard. Kyle was born with his arms off here and his legs here. His parents had a choice to make. Treat him like an invalid or treat him like a superstar, a champion. They treated him like a champion. They coached him with empathy and care to do everything any other kid had to learn as he was growing up. He learned. He went on to do well in high school. He wrestled. He played football. Boom! They didn't see him coming, but he'd nail him. And he was asked once by somebody, Carl, what about your disability? And Kyle responded by saying, disability? What disability? Life is full of possibilities. That's what we do when we coach our team. We help them see the possibilities, not the problems. We help them see the achievement that they can reach, what they're capable of. We mine that potential. You treat them like superstars. You coach them like superstars. And you'll get superstar results. And you'll be seen as a superstar leader. I have this dream that soars on golden wings. I visualize your achievements and your legacy that sings. I do not know all about your awesome goals or your persistent efforts to raise the bar. I only know that you're the best, a superstar. Thanks for coming and take care now. And by the way, follow through on that coaching today.